We have Stella Diamant joining us. After working in Madagascar and realizing that no work was being done on whale sharks, she initiated the Madagascar Whale Shark Project in 2016. So, a multidisciplinary and collaborative project aiming to gather scientific data on whale sharks and protect them in Madagascar, and of course, to empower communities locally. So, her team has identified more than 400 juvenile whale sharks off the northwestern Madagascar, which have never been observed anywhere else in the world. So, here we go. Let's bring Stella in, nice front and center. Hey, Stella, how are you?
Hello, Joe. How are you? I'm good.
I'm good. I'm good. It's so good to see you. In fact, I was so excited to bring you in. I forgot I had a little video that I wanted to queue up before you begin your presentation. So if you want to start your screen share backstage,
Yeah.
I'm going to cue in that little video to give people a little taste of the Whale Shark Project. So here we go. All right. Absolutely amazing. Love that view under the water. Love to see the program in action. Stella, it's so great to have you starting off day 3.
Yeah, it's 8 o'clock for you, right?
You got it. We're starting first thing. We're going to run right to 6:30 p.m. Eastern. So shorter than yesterday, but it should be a great day.
Okay, can you see my screen now and my first slide?
We got it. All right. I'm going to tuck myself away. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I was here last year already, and as usual, there is so much to say about the work we do and about my journey here and about whale sharks. So this year I wanted to do something a bit different and just talk about what we've learned about the whale sharks so far and why it's so unique what we see in Madagascar and what's at stake really. So a bit of a different format, but hopefully you enjoy this. So just a bit of background on whale sharks and why it's so fascinating working with them. So they're found all across the world, mainly in tropical and subtropical seas, as you can see here where the blue is. And just so you know, and we all agree, this is where Madagascar is. So it's in the Indian Ocean. And that's where I've been working since 2016. Oops. Sorry. So yeah, a bit of background on whale sharks. So they're the biggest fish in the sea, and they're actually a shark, not a whale, despite the name. The name comes from the fact that they're so big, like a whale, and also they feed on very small things like plankton and bait fish. So really, they're not like a shark with teeth, like we would say. Actually, they do have very small teeth. That's just a bit of background so you understand better what we're talking about. This is a very simple image, but it shows you just how big they can get and how small they start with. So when they're born, they're pretty much half a meter big, and then slowly, they very, very slowly, they will grow up to be a mature adult at about 9 meters, and then from then onwards, it's even slower, and then they become larger animals. And actually, the biggest ever recorded was more than 18 meters. So seeing these animals is very rare, and the ones we see in Madagascar are juvenile, as you can see on this chart, so pretty much around 5 meters. So because of the fact that they grow so slowly, they're sadly endangered by the IUCN, and they're listed as an endangered species on the red list. So actually, there's many different causes why whale sharks are declining, and I think it's important before I explain you more about the work we do in Madagascar to explain what risks they face and just how critical our work is. So sorry, this is a bit more depressing. One of the biggest causes, and actually this is all explained in a paper we published with another huge group of basically all the whale shark scientists. Pretty much we collaborated on providing data for this big study. It came out a few weeks ago, and it basically shows that whale sharks are seeing a lot of big ships, especially container ships, and that means they get hit because they're often found at the surface feeding, and so they end up with these horrible scars, which often leads to death. That is one of the big causes we've realized from the paper for their decline. Another cause, of course, is plastic pollution, and as we know, as I explained, because whale sharks feed at the surface mainly, and also they feed like a whale by filter feeding. Whatever is floating at the surface, they will ingest, and of course that can be fatal to them. And another cause, there's many of them, I could do a whole talk of this, but it's shark finning. And especially in poorer countries, it's sadly very lucrative for people to cut fins off sharks and sell them again. And of course that is not a great thing for the population. So enough of the sad things. We actually have good news from Madagascar. So very long story short, I started working on the species a bit by chance in 2016, and then we published our first paper 2018, and then it was all over the news that Madagascar is this new place where whale sharks hang out. Actually, they've always been there. There was already some previous work done by Rachel, who's presenting, I think, as part of this festival, but it stopped, and then eventually I decided to pick it up again, and so suddenly everyone was talking about it, and it's been great publicity for the country. And so I'm here today just to explain you a bit more what we found so far about this population that really was not studied on the long term. So we knew there were whale sharks and communities knew, but there was no actual long-term science being done. So as Joe said, one of the big things, that I'm quite proud of is that we've identified more than 400 sharks now. Knowing when we started collecting data, there were about 10 on the online database. So it clearly is a very important place for them. All the whale sharks have names and data codes. It's something I enjoy doing, and it's easier for me to remember them, to give them names. And they also have, as you can see on this slide, they all have little markings and scars from the lives they've had at sea as wild animals. So for example, Raymond, who's one of the bigger sharks, he has this big scar, as you can see on the image. And then Michel, who's one of the most famous shark of Madagascar, actually, he has a cut tail. So that helps us as scientists to identify them and also keep track of how the injuries heal. And of course, there's many stories behind the names, but they all have names, and we all know the sharks pretty well. The one thing we do, which is very common to studying wild animals, especially in the ocean, is photo identification. So you'll see on some of the slides, I've added the names of the shark just so you maybe you meet them that way, but you'll see they're all different. So this is Michel, the previous shark. You can see him on the right. The top left. So he has a cut tail, and also he has a little spot that's a bit different. You can see here in the red square, and that's pretty much how we recognize him. And basically what we do through collaborations with tourist boats and citizen scientists that we train each year, we go out at sea. When the tourists jump in to swim with the whale sharks, but I'll touch back on that later, we collect standardized data in the form of photo ID like this. So we pretty much take the same picture of each shark, and then that gives us a catalog with pretty much the same picture, but actually they're all different because all the whale sharks have different spots, like it's like a fingerprint for them. And then that allows us basically to count them, and also to know if they've been back, if they're male or female, how long they are, if they're growing at all. So this is the basis of the population work we do on whale sharks. This is a small video to show you what whale sharks do when they're in Madagascar. So the reason we get to be so close to them is because they come to feed at the surface. So Madagascar in that respect is very unique because whale sharks will come feed seasonally. So every year from September to December, they come to feed. And as you can see, they don't move very much. So it's quite easy for us to collect data. They're very relaxed, and you can see there's a bunch of other animals around them. They're actually tuna, and they all kind of collaborate together to get access to this food, which you don't really see in the video, but it's pretty much like very small bait fish. Sorry. Here we go. Here you see it at the surface. So this is another shark called Ernest that we also know very well. And you can see here at the top, it's pretty much the same video, like the same setting from the previous slide. But you can see here at the top, the very small bait fish. They're pretty much this small, and they come specifically to Madagascar to feed on this. So yeah, from September to December, suddenly there's lots of sharks, there's lots of bait fish around. It's very productive. Yet at the same time, the water stays blue. So it's kind of a very unusual way to see whale sharks. Usually you see them in more murky water or in very shallow water. So here we have water that's about 60 to 100 meter deep, and beautiful blue water, and then lots of whale sharks feeding in a very not very active way, you'd say, sorry. So they, like you saw in the previous video, they kind of stop and just eat. And it's very special to see. So actually, because they come each year, we've managed to collect data on their location. And you can see here on this map, each different color is a different year. And actually, through the 4 years of data collection we've done previous to the pandemic, you can see they really use the same area again and again and again. So it's clearly a very important area for them to come and feed. You can see this dashed square is one of the marine protected areas in the region. So far there's only 2. The other one is on the other side of Nosy Bay, but sadly the whale sharks don't go in there much. So really what we've realized through our work is that whale sharks are partly protected, but not really. And actually most of the time they could potentially be fished because they're not officially protected in Madagascar. They could get hit by boats. There's basically nothing in place to protect them. And as I've explained before, because they take such a long time to grow and reach maturity, we really need to protect them until they reach that stage where they can reproduce. So that's kind of what we base our work on, is to create this safe place for them to come back to every year. And then we also work with tourism operators, but I'll talk about this in a sec. So this is a bit more kind of the sciencey bit, but I find it fascinating. So the previous slide, this is in season. So when we're out with the tourist boats, this is the data we collect. And then this data is from satellite tags. It was one of the first studies we did in 2016. And actually this data represents about 4 months of tracking whale sharks. You can see in the little legend, there were 8 sharks we tagged, and they all went in different directions, which is fascinating. So we initially thought they were leaving Nosy Bay because we don't see them after December. And also the cyclone season starts, it becomes very rainy. So they must be going somewhere else to like another place where they all feed. Actually, not really. They all go do different things. So one nearly went all the way to Mozambique, where our partners work as well. And actually one shark, the red one, who we call Jack, completely by chance, he did quite a long trip, and he went all the way to the south of Madagascar. It was about, I think, 3,000 kilometers when the tag stopped transmitting, and it was pretty much 4 or 5 months. And then the tag stopped transmitting, and that's another we could do a whole presentation about why we cannot keep up with whale sharks when they go far and deep. We don't currently have enough technology to follow them year round. And over the years as well. So we were lucky to see where Jacques was going for a few months. And then actually the tag stopped transmitting. So we were wondering, are we going to see the shark again? And actually we did. So that's him 2 years later. And as you can see, like it's the only day we saw him. And thanks to the photo ID that I explained before, through this video that a guy took completely by chance, because it was a beautiful moment of synchronicity between bottlenose dolphins and a whale shark, which is very rare to see. So the guide filmed this, and we could then look back at the video and realize, oh, wow, this is Jacques. He's made it back. So he did at least a 7,000 kilometer trip. He was there for 1 day. We never saw him again. And the 1 day he was there with dolphins. So it's quite a nice story, but basically to show you that through different disciplines and methods in data collection, we can try to understand better their movements and what they're up to. So just coming back to this slide, I get a bit nerdy with this, but basically where you see a lot of dots is where the whale sharks feed, and they're at the surface. So you can see up north in Nosy Bay, where our study site is, the whale sharks are feeding a lot. So they're, like you saw in the video, at the surface, feeding and not really diving. And then you see further down, pretty much where Jacques is, there's less data points and just straight lines. And that means the whale sharks were underwater. They weren't at the surface transmitting to the satellite. So it's really interesting to see that they clearly seem to come back to Nosy Bay to feed on this very special food source. And at the same time, they do travel long distances where they seem to adopt a different type of life with more diving. So who knows what they're doing down there? What we know is that out of these 8 sharks, 6 of them came back, and we've seen them again since. So it clearly is a very important area for them. And of course, another thing is that they're very harmless. In this picture is one of our guides, Thomas, who we work with, and a few of the, we have very few female whale sharks, and that's one of them. It's incredible moments to swim with them. They're very relaxed and beautiful conditions. So of course, this has been a source of debate initially, but it's really a great source of income for the communities to benefit from this type of tourism. It's pretty much ecotourism if it's well regulated. So we did a study on this, and we interviewed a lot of people, about 500, who came through in Madagascar to swim with whale sharks. And we asked them, why are you deciding to come to Madagascar? Would you prefer it if the whale sharks were protected? Asking all these questions. And basically we realized that per year, whale sharks are bringing in $1.5 million to Madagascar, which is a huge figure for a country that's incredibly poor. And also, it's a very strong argument for their protection, because if we can empower communities to care about them, then they will be making money from the sharks instead of maybe trying to catch them and cut their fins off. And then in turn, they care about the whale sharks, actually. And we have many guides now who can recognize the sharks by name, who are very tuned in about what they do. So this is pretty much our model now, is to really push for sustainable tourism, and then that way this will protect the whale sharks. So one of the things we work on a lot is the code of conduct. So in most places in the world, there is a code of conduct in place to regulate interactions between humans and whale sharks. And we're very strict on this. So it's 1 boat at a time per shark. And of course, this is all then explained to the guides and the captains. So we have yearly training sessions where we rent big boats and we take people out. We're now collaborating with other organizations. And hopefully soon we'll have the code of conduct as an official law in Madagascar. It would be the first ever law on any shark species, especially whale sharks. So we're very excited about this, and this will be a huge push to further implement sustainable tourism for the communities. And then another thing we really care about is, of course, education. So we have a small team now that goes into local schools and also runs activities on the beach for kids who don't have access to school. And we share the work we do and what we've learned so far. And in turn, that generates attention from the kids, which is then translated to the parents. So it's a long journey, but we're already seeing some results, and it's been very, very inspiring to see how easily people start caring about the ocean once we give them the right tools. So this is all from me. We have a bunch of stuff coming up. We're going to be going back in August. So follow us on social media. We often need volunteers. We have also volunteer openings. And at the same time, we mainly rely on donors and extra support to make all of this happen. So feel free to get in touch if you want to get involved. Thank you.
All right. There we go. Stella, absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing those updates on the project. What continues to impress me is how the project itself continues to grow.
I muted you, Joe. Sorry, I'm back.
That's okay. Yeah, no worries, Stella. I was just saying thank you for a great presentation. And it always impresses me how the project continues to grow and how your passion really shines through for what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, hopefully after 2 years of not going, hopefully this year is going to be a
Oh,
good.
I can bet you're just dreaming of jumping into the water with those whale sharks for the first time. It's going to be
Yeah.
incredible.
Thank you.
Amazing. So a few questions, excuse me, a few questions here, Stella. Of course, a shout out to those who are tuning in right now. You can use the chat to send in any questions that you might have, and we'll share some with Stella. But Stella, I'm really curious about the students and the education program you're doing.
Yes.
Before you get into the classroom, before you talk to the students, do they know what whale sharks are? Do they know that they're in their water, or is it something completely new that just surprises them? They have these massive fish, these whale sharks.
Yeah. Depends. Some kids know. Majority doesn't. And when we start explaining how big they get, they're usually amazed. And the really cool part is when we get the kids on the boat, which we're starting to do more. But of course, it's another budget to do that. But that's just amazing because they never imagined seeing them, and suddenly they're seeing a boat, not even swimming with them, but just seeing them next to the boat, and it's pretty much bigger than the boat. So then they get really excited.
Oh, I can imagine. It'd be absolutely amazing. I imagine a few of them might be apprehensive to jump into the water the first time, but I'm sure it kind of it just excites them too to learn what they eat. These big, massive sharks, and they're filter feeding out of the water the small zooplankton. Amazing. Okay, so congratulations on the new law being passed. That's amazing. Shark protection in Madagascar is so important. There is a big industry there where sharks are taken. So it's great to see some protection for a shark species.
Yeah, well, we're not there yet, but touching wood is on the way.
Yeah.
We now have support from the Ministry of Tourism that's going to kind of carry the law to the other ministries, and it's been a really long working process because I'm not sure you got that from the presentation, but before the work we did, there wasn't even any like people didn't even know what there were whale sharks around. So we had to start from the bottom up about any kind of legislation, even export permits, research permits. There was nothing in place for this species. So it's all a bit longer.
Yeah. So we've got a question here coming in via the chat about when the whale sharks are gathering to feed, what other species are gathering as well to take advantage of that?
So mainly whale sharks, but then we have these crazy days where there's krill in addition to the bait fish, and then we have different species of whales, dolphins, a lot of rays, mogular rays, especially sometimes even giant manta rays, and it's just like underwater cinema. You stay there the whole day. Even some of the captains who don't want to get cold by going in the water, they will just like put their head in, and we just watch day long because it's just amazing.
Oh my gosh, that does sound absolutely amazing. I can only imagine what it's like to be in the water, just surrounded by not only the whale sharks, but whales and rays, and oh wow, amazing.
Yeah, it's really humbling. Mainly, you realize how small you are.
Yeah, and so those mantas, do they come and go as well?
Yeah, so the giant manta rays, again, nothing is being done on them, so we're kind of now starting a small project when we see them.
Yeah.
They're only there a few days a year, really, when there's a lot of food, and then they do this underwater ballet where they're when they feed and they do these loops, and it's really amazing.
Yeah. So the final question here is what's next? And I think you've already touched on that. We don't know where they go. You see them in the water, but we don't know where they go. So is that a large part of what you're hoping comes next, or do you have a few other things on the go?
We're doing a lot, especially this year because we have some time to catch up on. But for me, really, the main focus is, of course, it'd be awesome to know where they go, but it's really like I was saying, we know they come here now. So we're trying to better understand what they feed on, how reliable is that food source, is it determined by weather, is it going to change with global warming, because Madagascar actually is one of the few places where we're really seeing the impacts. There's a lot more cyclones, there's a lot more drought. So is that all going to continue, or is it going to change? To me, that's really important to determine that first so we can better protect this place. And also, of course, we're deploying some acoustic tags this year, and that's going to allow us to know if they're there the whole year. Actually, if some of them leave, do they all leave? Like all of these kind of more detailed questions. Which areas do they use in particular? So then maybe we can have speed limits on certain areas or not. So it's kind of just trying to understand better the dynamics.
Yeah. Well, Stella, I have no doubt that you're going to get there and just make up for lost time. Have obviously a great time, and hopefully, engage the community. See some of the students you've worked with in the past as well, and see how they've grown and they're excited about their natural environment, their natural ecosystem. Stella, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for starting off day 3. Let me share the link to the website here one more time, madawhalesharks.org. Please do visit. Please do, if you can, make a donation to help this really important work happen. And I think maybe even another best of all addition is to get out there to Madagascar. And those tourism dollars are so important and can play such a huge role in the protection of the species.
Yeah, and I guess spread the word, because sharks don't benefit from the best reputation, and whale sharks is such a great example. They're only bringing good things, I think. So hopefully we can share the word about their greatness.
Absolutely. Stella, thank you so much. Great to see you. Have a great rest of the weekend, and good luck in July. I can't wait for an update.
Thank you, Joe.
All right.
Good luck for the festival. Bye.
See you, Stella.